Nope, it's not a film about me.
Well, I'm terrified, okay? You won. Now, will you just please step aside and let me go? Stop. Stop it. Stop it! Stop it!
Creep is a film that's intrigued me for ages. The setup seemed pretty dull, so I didn't have any interest in viewing it, until I saw it had some seriously impressive reviews. The movie follows a guy who answers a Craigslist advert for a videographer. He goes to meet the person who put up the ad and finds that he's looking for someone to film and edit a video for his unborn son. The stranger claims that he's dying from cancer and that the video would show his son who his dad was after his death. Unfortunately, he grows more and more eccentric, asking the cameraman personal questions and making him complete weird tasks where it's clear he's in danger. The film cuts out all bullshit. Within 2 minutes, you're right in the fire of the plot. Here's the setup, here's the characters, now let's get freaky.
I talked to Angela.
From the first moment you see this guy, his creeper smile suggests that something ain't right. You just know the guy has an ulterior motive that he's not telling us, and that's where a lot of the tension comes from. While it is very creepy, it can be quite hilarious too due to how awkward he is. It also becomes incredibly unpredictable because he switches on a whim.
He was a good man.
Until he wasn't.
Mark Duplass gives a near perfect performance as Joseph. The man genuinely seems unhinged, and is really one of those roles where it's difficult to detach the actor from the character. He's just so compellingly strange that you forget it's a movie. If I had to describe him, the best I could do is just imagine those overly upbeat and hyper actors that came round schools to teach about STDs and drugs, only they're uber camp and even more creepy. Part of the tension is that you don't know if the guy is nuts, if he's a genuine psycho making it all up, or if he's just breaking down due to his cancer diagnosis. Whatever the case, he's in full control of the situation. The cameraman is played by the director Patrick Bryce, and he's actually not that bad, considering this is the only thing he's acted in before or since. He's just outclassed by Duplass in every scene, and it makes him appear a little less developed, but it can't be helped when you have a character this good. The film was almost entirely improvised throughout, with the two filming sections over and over and seeing what would work. Bryce himself actually said there were sometimes around 10 to 12 different versions of each segment, and the challenge was piecing them together in the best way.
One drink, okay? One drink, and I'll send you on your merry way. Please?
After the first two acts are so intriguing, the third act is where there's the most threat, but it suffers from the loss of Duplass chewing up the screen for long segments. Again, Bryce isn't a terrible actor, but his character just isn't as interesting, and what he gets put through not nearly as entertaining as when Joseph is right in his face, present and putting him on alert constantly. However, while it does run out of steam, the ending more than makes up for it with a great reveal that only makes our lovable villain seem all the more real with some brutal realistic horror. I was honestly surprised by how much I really enjoyed Creep. It shows that all you really need to make an entertaining and engrossing film is a damn good actor and a director that knows how to utilise them best. I recommend anyone in the mood to see a properly well done found footage movie to check it out.
What about you? What's your story?
My story,
Okay, I have to be honest for a second. If you haven't seen Creep 1 or 2 yet, don't watch this next part, as I have to spoil massive twists from the first film in order to discuss it. I'd recommend watching both of them, then returning to watch this next segment once you have, as the sequel is terrific and it works best when you have no clue what it's about. So yeah, just pause the video and I'll see you in a bit. So, now that you've either returned, no doubt exhilarated, or you've just ignored my warning and don't care about spoilers, let's talk about Creep 2.
I am what is commonly known as a serial killer.
So, we established at the end of the first movie that Joseph is a serial killer, whose modus operandi is that he records himself tormenting his victims before killing them and editing together a film about their last days on Earth. This is based on the videos that they record that he asks for under false pretenses. This is such a creative motive that feels like something a true-to-life insane killer would do. It's far more interesting than if he was just a crazy person, and the sequel actually lets him explain why he feels this need to do this. Yet again, the film jumps straight back into it with a killer opening. No bullshit at all, it knows why you're watching and it gives you what you came for within minutes.
I don't know what's happening to me, Dave. I've lost my inspiration. I have no joy in my work. I don't even know if I can do this anymore.
One thing that struck me as odd is that this time there's opening titles. But as we now know that he's the one making these videos, I guess it fits. Now, you'd think it would just be a retread of the first film's formula, where Yosef will lure some poor victim in with a fake story, and then act all disturbing before killing them. But the film is smart enough to know that this would just give in to the law of diminishing returns. In Creep 2, we now follow a young journalist who produces her own web series where she documents her meetings with strange people online. That's actually a very modern setup. People making their own shows on YouTube is a rather popular thing. Hell, it's what I'm doing right now. And the frustration she goes through when it isn't getting the response or interest that she feels it's worth, it's probably relatable to many people in the media industry. It's a good setup, and obviously she comes across Yosef's advert, reeling her into his world. As I say, you'd be forgiven for thinking it'll just be a rehash of the first one with a different setup and scares.
I would meet a man at a bar, and I would take him outside and lay him on the floor, and I would put a knife in his chest and gut him open and open his insides, and the universe would reveal itself to me, and it was beautiful.
But then the film completely throws you off course by having the guy admit to his crimes near instantly. I mean, like 5 minutes into the movie, he just lays out that he's a serial killer, and then he says that he wants her to make a movie commemorating his life. Why? Well, he explains he's going through a midlife crisis. It's hard to imagine a serial killer being pained by something so normal, but at the end of the day, Joseph is still a person, and it makes it all the more sinister humanizing him in this way. He's not only an unforgiving murderer, but he's also just like everyone else who worries about his own legacy he'll leave when he dies, and reacts to the ravages of time like all of us. Duplass here has completely perfected his persona. There's no cracks to be found. He is this character. Personally, I think he's destined to go down as one of the all-time great horror movie villains. He's been morphed into something complete this time round, rather than the eccentric goofball he was in the first. We learn more about him, we see him out of his element, and yet still only feel like we're scratching the surface of his potential. It's just a masterful performance. Though it's hard to upstage Duplass at this point, Desiree Afghan gives a great understated and grounded performance that plays against him in this film. The straight man to his comic, if you will.
Oh my god. Oh my god, you got me.
How do you feel?
I feel like...
She's not like his previous victims. She's a hardened stone that meets him at his own game. Sarah is committed to achieving her goals, knowing this could be her big break with a weirdo one film, and is willing to see it to the end even with all the red flags in front of her. It makes a much more interesting dynamic when the main character in this type of film are usually just scared and looking for a way out throughout the plot. Because she isn't a pushover, Yosef is clearly unnerved and out of his comfort zone. He can't stand not being in control of the situation and playing his sick little games. It makes things even less predictable than in the first, especially because Yosef is still jumpy and changes on a dime. But when he tries his tactics, Sarah has her own spin on the situation that forces him to retreat and lower his defenses. It's this balance of power as each struggles to control the other that makes the movie so watchable, with a really hypnotic sexual undertone between the two that is increasingly alluring.
Oh shit. When did you dig that?
I dug it before you got here. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be for me or for you, but I think I finally figured it out.
People may be disappointed that it might not have as many scary scenes, but it makes up for it with how damn good everything else in the film is. And by the end, there's more than enough unsettling moments to satisfy horror fans. It's a different kind of movie that twists our presumptions of how it'll go down to entertain us in a whole new way. Creep 2 elevated what came before it to create a fresh and new take on a killer movie, and with a third due to come out, personally, I can't wait to see where they take this series next. Together, they play more as disturbing character studies, with a deep dive into a murderer's mind that I wholeheartedly recommend you check out.
Okay, so just to be clear, you want me to take this axe and chop your head off with it?
Yes, 100%. Camera heard it first. Consider it an assisted suicide. It's totally cool.
All right. Any last words?
Nope. I've talked enough for 10 lifetimes.